All right, what's up, everybody? It's another episode of the Big Doug and Carmi Show. Our guest today is friend of the show, Branden Darr. Branden, how are you, buddy?
I'm doing great, guys. Thank you for having me back. I feel like this is becoming a yearly tradition right after the Combine coming on. I appreciate it.
We always enjoy having you on. It's for the Commanders fans. It's the best time of year.
Absolutely.
It's not the 4 wins that we look forward to each year. George, what has stood out to you so far?
I think the running back carousel has been really interesting for me so far. I love that. It's been a lot of fun, actually. And it's still not over yet. We still have Derrick Henry kind of on the waiver wire. Right now, we don't know where he's going to go, but it is fun. I think Josh Jacobs going to the Packers is a great fit. I think he'll do pretty well there. We saw Saquon Barkley go to the Eagles, which is definitely a very intriguing turn of events. So I'm sure we'll talk about that in a moment. We see Gus Edwards going to the Chargers, and we see Pollard going to the Titans. So that's been very intriguing. Also, Kirk Cousins going to the Falcons. So that's definitely pretty interesting, too. So it's been a fun free agency so far. We're only 4 hours into it so far, too.
George, you and I had been talking about Cousins to the Falcons. Not that we broke some kind of news. I think everybody had started to see it that way. But we should just call this like Kirk Cousins season, because nobody gets the bag, Branden, like Kirk does. And listen, people are talking about the injury, but it's not like he was rushing 4,000 yards every year anyway. To me, that wasn't a problem. And fantasy-wise, Branden, this is a boost for a bunch of people in Atlanta.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that fit in Atlanta. Stock up on basically every Atlanta Falcon at this point. I mean, that is such a good fit in a Shanahan system. It's going to be fantastic. I mean,
think about Pitts, like all the Jordan Reed role for Pitts just like blows my mind.
Yeah, the spot for Reed and the spot for Drake London are just incredible.
Absolutely.
And like Kirk doesn't check down a ton. Like he's going to force feed the ball to like London and Pitts, but Bijan's going to get a ton of catches too.
Absolutely.
Like, I mean, that offense, if they add a secondary receiver that's better than whoever they had last year, it wasn't Zacchaeus. That's who I want to say.
That's what I want to say too. Yeah, I'm trying to think of it.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, if they can add a secondary receiver to take some coverage away from Drake London, that's a fantastic offense.
Absolutely, I agree.
And they get to draft it. You know what I mean? Now you're drafting around Kirk, and you're not having to start from the beginning, which is huge. The Eagles, big surprise at running back there. I don't. Maybe it's just me. I kind of like Swift for $4 million less than I do Saquon Barkley, which I was surprised the Bears spent big on Swift. George, you're the interesting fit from New York to Philadelphia.
I think Barkley's a great fit in Philadelphia, to be honest with you. I think the offensive line's pretty strong. I think they could do a little RPO action with Hurts as well. They also have A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and Goddard. They have a lot of offense, and they won't necessarily have to depend on Saquon Barkley like the Giants did. So that might kind of alleviate some carries there for them. But I think it's a great fit because I think the Eagles will be a high, potent offense you can get down the field. So, like, if we're talking fantasy, I think Saquon, it should be maybe a first-round potential draft pick, or second-round draft pick for sure. Yeah. I think he definitely goes up there a lot. I mean, he was already kind of on that fringe anyway, but it's even better for the Eagles. Swift, on the other hand, I don't like the fit in the Chicago. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I think like Chicago's running back core has always been kind of convoluted anyway. There's Khalil Herbert there. There's Roschon Johnson there as well.
I like both those guys, George.
Yeah, me too. I thought Roschon Johnson was going to be like a high, like dark horse pick in fantasy this year as well. So kind of adding Swift kind of takes away from that a little bit too. And we have no idea what's going to happen with Justin Fields. So I don't know if I like Swift there. I don't know if I like Pollard in Tennessee either. I think it's kind of a weaker fit as well. But I think we talked about, Kirk Cousins in Atlanta. I think, buy all Falcons players for sure. And I think I kind of like Barkley in Philadelphia, to be honest with you guys.
Yeah, I like Barkley in Philly too. I'm a little concerned about Jalen Hurts' ability to unlock Barkley through the air.
That's true.
I mean, he doesn't chuck down a ton. So, like, is Barkley going to reach his maximum potential in Philly? Probably not. But, like, Philly just cranks out, like, top 5 rushers when they have a lead back. So, for me, I mean, Barkley's great in fantasy. I'm not exactly sure how high he'll go just because the first round is going to be dominated by wide receivers. But, George, what you were saying about Swift and the Bears, couldn't agree more. I don't like the fit. Roschon Johnson is better as a pass receiving back. It's kind of what DeAndre Swift is too.
Mm-hmm.
If they keep Khalil Herbert, like, it's just a logjam. And I kind of like the fit for Tony Pollard in Tennessee. Like, I like Tajay Spears a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, if they go like a thunder and lightning kind of thing that they did back when they had Derrick Henry and Deion Lewis, like, Pollard is not a thunder back, but he could be. Like, they could give him the carries between the 20s and let Tajay Spears come in on third downs. They can be complementary to one another. I'm not exactly sure, for how much they're paying him that they're going to be complementary to each other, but it could be an interesting fit at the very least.
Yeah.
As running backs fly off the board, and I still think there's an interesting fit with the Commanders and Derrick Henry. But Josina Anderson says, I'm told the Commanders and Raiders have made preliminary inquiries on Austin Eckler.
Oh, wow.
Well,
yeah.
Austin Eckler instead of Antonio Gibson. What is your thoughts on Austin Eckler to the Commanders?
I can go first if you want, Branden, because I'm sure you have more insight than I do. But I think initial thoughts, Eckler was if we're looking at fantasy, if we're looking at production type of running back, he was putting up like 20 touchdowns or close to 20 touchdowns per year for a couple of years in a row. But he basically has regressed pretty astoundingly last year. I drafted him in the first round, like number 5 or 6 last year, and he really let me down, to be honest.
Yes.
Like I should have got it was like him or Tyreek Hill, and I picked Austin Eckler because running backs are at a deficit, and boom, I really screwed myself over there. So that's from a fantasy perspective. I like, in a real life perspective on the Commanders, I can see him being more of a effective pass catcher than Antonio Gibson was, because we always wanted Gibson to be a pass catching back, but he never actually came to fruition here in DC. But I'm sure Eckler's cost is going to be a lot of money. I don't know if I like that fit in DC, because I don't think he is a workhorse, heavy 20-touch kind of running back anymore. I don't really see that in my perspective. Branden, what are your thoughts?
I mean, you could see it towards the end of the year. He just looked so slow.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there was that one GIF that was going around of him like coming around the outside, and he just had zero burst, zero explosion. And I mean, like, people were joking. He had like 10 miles per hour on the GPS, but like,
that's funny.
I mean, it wasn't that bad, but I can see him as like the pass down back. But again, if you're bringing in Austin Eckler, you're paying Austin Eckler. Like, you're not going to get him for $2 million, $3 million a year. He's probably going to command closer to $5 or $6 million a year at least.
More than that, yeah.
More.
Yeah, exactly.
And like, if you're giving him that to be your third down back, like, you can get that in the draft in like the 4th or 5th round. Like, you don't need to pay that kind of money for Austin Eckler. Like, the name is great, the value's not.
So, Doug, let me throw a question to you right there. So, Eckler, right? So, Saquon Barkley walked away with about $15 million per year, or potentially, right? Then we start seeing like other running backs. I think Pollard was $8 million, Swift was about $8 million as well. I'd expect Eckler to get probably around $10 million, right? Would you rather have Eckler for $10 million, or like Blake Corum basically in the 3rd round for the same, for a 3rd round pick? What would you do about that?
I'd rather have Aaron Jones or Derrick Henry than Austin Eckler for what that money is.
Okay.
And I get it. With the Derrick Henry thing, I can just see where they're going to want to pound the rock this year, a la James Conner and Eric. And I know that we kind of have that in Robinson, but I'm not here to have a conversation about whether Derrick Henry and Brian Robinson are in the same category, because I think Henry still got some. And so I could see this world where they're just smashing the ball next year. I also can see a world where Aaron Jones still has a lot to take. I quite frankly like to see the number that Aaron Jones gets as to why the Packers thought moving off of him for what's his name? Also,
Josh Jacobs. Yeah, I mean, I like Josh Jacobs
I
more
think
than I like.
it's a good fit there in Green Bay,
all
to be
the
honest with
you
you.
can pick up all the zoo shares out in Oakland or out in Las Vegas now too. It's the Bulldogs' time out there, which makes me very happy, as you know.
For now.
For now, yes. But yeah, I mean, George, they'll probably draft somebody.
Yeah.
Also, I mean, yes, if I can get Blake Corum in the fourth, I think I'm interested and excited about that.
I can see what you're saying though about Derrick Henry as well. I don't know if he fits our timeline in regard to like a rebuilding team because he's definitely an older running back.
Darnell Savage just signed a 3-year deal with Jacksonville for $21 million.
I saw that Maryland guy too, so I definitely like that.
I like him. Somewhere Cam Curl is upset because that 12 million ain't coming.
We'll see. Branden, what are your thoughts on that? Me and Doug talk about it extensively, so we're kind of already have our own thoughts on it.
Well, I'm glad they didn't give the tag to Curl because that would
okay for sure.
But like,
yeah.
I mean, I don't think the $12 million contract's coming for safeties. It kind of feels like the money for safeties is going to like guards and stuff now. Like some of these guard contracts are just way above what I was thinking.
Yeah, me too, like $20 million.
Yeah, so like if you're going to be paying guards $20 million a year now, you're not going to be able to pay.
Yeah, and they are getting paid. Did you see the Hunt salary?
Yeah, I mean, like. It Curl's fine as like a safety. I think people slightly overrate how good he is, but like at the same time, some cohesion on the defensive unit would be great, especially in the secondary. So like I would bring him back. I don't want to pay him $12 million a year, but I would bring him back.
Yeah. They need just a little of experience back there. It feels like that's a bunch of young guys. And of course, again, we talk all the time on this show, Branden. I'm curious your thoughts on it. Just kind of like the bump that some of these guys will get from the new system, from the new energy. George, who was it? Who was it that told us about Percy Butler and the fact they handed him 4 different playbooks to learn?
Mitch Tischler said that. Yeah, he told us that.
Yeah, gave him 4 different playbooks: the safety, the free safety, the nickel, and the corner. Said study all of these just in case. Like,
yeah,
just that alone, you would think that the guys will get a bump.
Well, thank God he's not going to have to learn 4 playbooks this year. I mean, I do worry a little bit about like the talent level of these guys. Like Percy Butler, when he was coming out, he had like an undrafted grade, and then guys like Quan Martin and Emmanuel Forbes were all a round or 2 lower than where they were drafted. So like I on some level, yes, the coaching will be better. The play should be better. But like, is the ceiling that of a first round pick or that of a second round pick? I don't know. And the coaching can be great and they can still not live up to their draft status. And I know people want to write off draft status as soon as their like first year in the league is done. But like, at a certain point, like these guys are capped because the previous regime was terrible at drafting.
Yeah.
Well, yes.
I think they were saying, I think there was a stat that came out yesterday. There was like, I think 9 starters over the last 5 Commanders drafts that are actually, there are 9 players that are starting for the Commanders over the last 5 drafts that are on the team right now. So basically there's whiff after whiff every year, year after year. Branden, what's your thoughts on the Dan Quinn hire? Were you happy about that, or how do you feel about all the coaches altogether?
So, like the defensive staff, I love. Special team staff, I love. Obviously, the front office staff, I love. I don't love the Quinn hire, but once they got to where they were and whatever happened with Ben Johnson happened, it's not like there were a ton of great options out there. And if Mike McDonald chose Seattle over you, it's not like there was a better option out there once Johnson, McDonald, and why am I blanking? Oh, Bobby Slowick are all off the table. So at that point, Quinn's the best option out there. I don't love the offensive staff. I do not think highly of Cliff Kingsbury. His offense was very stale in Arizona. You looked at the major drop-off at USC last year that Caleb Williams had. I don't love what he brings to the table. Bringing a tight ends coach from Arizona that couldn't unlock Trey McBride, I don't love that. Brian Johnson is a good hire. I think for him being the QB coach, working with a young guy, we've heard what he's done with Jalen Hurts or did with Jalen Hurts. So I can at least get on board with that hire. I can't get on board with the entire staff. for me, Cliff is completely uninspiring.
Mm. My worry is that there's just a hodgepodge of coaches together, right? I feel like it's going to be a true challenge for Dan Quinn to bring everyone together and kind of have a united vision of what the offense is going to look like. Like we have Kingsbury, we have Brian Johnson, we have Anthony Lynn we haven't even talked about him yet, coming from the 49ers. We have a big mix of players. Go ahead, Doug. What are you saying?
To me, that's the key, George. To me, that was the key, was bringing on Anthony Lynn. It shows they want to do, because, we looked at the film study, George, on Tuesday, and the biggest problem for him was not being able to marry the play action to the run. Like there would be times that he would call a play action that they had never passed out of, and it just never went anywhere. And so Lynn brings some of that with him. I think it will be fascinating to see what that offense actually looks like. I remember by the time, 2022, when they had Ertz in Arizona, it was not at all what I would call an air raid system, maybe some form of a spread.
Horizontal raid?
Yes, something to that effect. And also you'll see, teams want to use motion now. They use no motion in Arizona because they wanted to go super fast. And what's the enemy of going super fast? Putting people in motion before the snap. So I'll be curious to see how much they've kind of molded and meshed together these things and how quickly it'll work. $30 million for Beatas. I'm sure I'm not saying that name right. It's interesting. I like having a veteran center to pair with a rookie, particularly if the center is going to be the one making the calls. I'm not sure whose job that is in this offense. But what it does make me wonder and concerned about is what will be the plan for the former third rounder and Ricky Stromberg. Has he automatically been relegated to the guy that can be the backup at 3 spots, or will he get a shot at guard? He can play guard, but they obviously didn't bring in the center at $10 million a year to play guard.
You mean to tell me that a Ron Rivera draft pick went awry?
Yeah,
crazy.
Crazy.
I know. Whatever happens with Stromberg, who cares? Honestly, he was a third-round pick. I get why people want to see the draft picks do well, but if we can all agree that Ron Rivera and his staff were not good at drafting, then why do we care so much about these draft picks? Like the initial reaction of, "Ooh, what happens to Stromberg?" Who cares? New regime.
That's all in the past. That's their fault. That's their problem. We start today, Brendan.
New regimes here. They're going to do what they want to do.
Branden, do you have a timeline of when you expect us to turn around or where you want it to turn around? Do you think this is a clean slate where you are starting from ground zero, or are your thoughts of we're going to be a good team this year, next year? What are your thoughts on all that?
How many teams have a worse roster than this one, Brenden?
Probably 5 or 6. I think they were poorly coached last year. Obviously, yeah.
Obviously.
The talent level.
Did you see Fennell say that Jack Del Rio's defense was a box of yuck after trying to explain that Kendall Fuller is still a very good corner? A box of yuck.
I think that's a fair description of the talent level.
That's
I think there are probably 5 or 6 teams with worse rosters. Now, your mileage may vary on the different players, but Terry McLaurin's a top 20 wide receiver when he's at his peak. I don't think very highly of Jahan Dotson, but I think with a quarterback at number 2, Brian Robinson has proven he's at least capable as a good running back. We'll see what they do at tight end. The offensive line can't get worse. It will improve. But trading away Sweat and Chase Young, the defensive line has 2 stud defensive tackles, and outside of that, it's a bunch of backups. Same can probably be said for the linebackers, other than Jamin Davis, who is, I don't know, maybe a middle-of-the-road kind of linebacker as far as starting linebackers go. And then when you look at the secondary, it's a bunch of young guys who we don't really know what they're capable of just because, A, the coaching was terrible, and B, they were overdrafted. So we'll see. A team like Arizona, outside of Tyler Murray, does not have a ton of talent, especially if they lose Marquise Brown.
Right.
Well, I think it'll be interesting in DC. I keep kind of pushing that a little bit. I think he'd be a good fit, as a third or fourth wide receiver. I don't know how you feel about that, Hollywood.
The Raiders just signed Gardner Minshew to a 2-year contract, and I only say
He's
that
starting by
because
week 4.
I just say that because it further eliminates possibilities for Justin Fields. Like Denny Carter just said, he assumes at this point Fields will be the starting quarterback for the DC Defenders.
I saw that.
I mean, I'm a Fields guy. I think eventually someone is going to land Fields, whether it's the Vikings, whether it's New England. I mean, I don't really think he's a great fit in New England, but
I agree.
he'd be a good fit in New England or in Minnesota. I think he'd be a decent fit in Denver, depending on what they're able to do. But I mean, it's pretty much over in every other spot at this point. I'm honestly a little surprised at the market for Justin Fields.
I also think the Raiders are pretty aggressive. They will be pretty aggressive for Jaden Daniels, by the way. So we know that Antonio Pierce has that Arizona State connection, and he potentially would want to trade up and get Jaden Daniels. So I wouldn't be surprised by that by any means either. So I don't know. So right now it's Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew in the Raiders QB room. I don't know if they're solidified there. We'll see how that goes.
The only QB room worse, I think, is Denver.
Yeah.
Minnesota, technically.
Technically, yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Brendan
Sure.
was that.
Or this one. I guess any of them that are going to take a quarterback next, because it's not looking great in New England either.
Brendan, does Zach Ertz inspire you by any chance?
You can be honest. The opposite of inspire.
Uninspired, I guess. I have no idea.
No. I mean, there's a Twitter account that tracks how much yak he gets.
Oh, really? That's hilarious.
I mean, like, if that's what you're dealing with, and he's like 33, like, you should have zero expectations.
Yeah.
I'd assume there's a chance he doesn't even make the roster.
Wow. Okay. I know he'd be on the team. I don't see more than like 500 yards receiving for the year. But you're saying
I don't see more than like 300 if you.
Wow. Okay. Gotcha.
I mean, like he looked awful last year.
Yeah.
I mean, he was slow. He couldn't break tackles. He doesn't get yak. He basically catches the ball and falls down, and that's all he's going to do if he makes the team. I can't imagine them. Like, the free agent tight ends aren't great, but if there's a tight end in round 2, like Jatavian Sanders, if he happens to be there at 36 or 40,
I love that. Mm-hmm.
I mean, I would have to do that just because there's literally nothing in free agency. Because I mean, if was it Colby Parkinson's getting $6 million a year, what are we doing?
I saw that.
Jesus.
This Russell Wilson thing's the craziest thing I can remember in recent memory. That the Broncos are going to pay him $39 million to be the starting quarterback for the Steelers for a year.
You know what it sounds like?
It is wild.
It's like Carson Wentz. 2 teams immediately give up on him after 1 year, and then he goes and plays for peanuts somewhere else. Now, that third team didn't have to trade for him like Washington, but yeah.
From a fantasy perspective, Brendan, I think it's pretty interesting because I know you got that little lens of that. Do you see Pickens, Najee Harris, anyone else thriving in Deontay Johnson thriving in Pittsburgh with Russell Wilson? Or, I mean, all those guys are underachievers in my opinion. Deontay Johnson's an underachiever. Najee Harris is an underachiever.
They're talking about trading Deontay Harris or Deontay too. I saw George Pickens season, maybe.
I saw some rumors about Deontay Johnson to Jacksonville and like some other spots that he might make sense.
Yeah.
Jacksonville just signed Duvernay.
Oh, wow.
Not that stops you from.
Yeah. I think Pickens is the ultimate guy that benefits from that. He's a jump ball guy. He makes some insane catches. And basically that's all Russell Wilson can do is throw like the deep ball and get a contested catch out of somebody. Mm-hmm. So it feels a little bit like the Baker-Mike Evans connection to me, where Godwin took like a massive step back last year just because he doesn't really fit what Baker does well and Mike Evans did. So to me, it's whoever is there outside of George Pickens takes a step back as far as fantasy. But I still wouldn't draft him very high.
Yeah,
like 7th round pick, 8th round pick, maybe.
They gave up a lot of money, and I know that was like the big name people wanted. I still would have preferred Danielle Hunter. Here's why. Bryce Huff has played on 21% of first downs throughout his 4-year career. That was the thing I didn't understand about giving Bryce Huff big money because he's a situational pass rusher. I'm much for a guy that I've got out there 3-4 downs. He got paid too.
Yeah. I mean, as long as you're a pass rusher, a cornerback, you're going to get paid.
Does anybody know how or why this tampering period actually began and what the point of it is?
No, but we do love to tamper legally because,
Yeah.
of course, we got the deal done in 12 minutes with DeAndre Swift. That's exactly how long it takes to get a contract signed and negotiated. 12 minutes.
Fully negotiated while many teams were trying to get his services.
Exactly.
I would love for somebody to tell me just what the point of it is, why, because it started sometime, and there was a conversation between people about why it should happen. I just love to know the reasoning.
I don't know. It doesn't make any sense.
The NFL loves to make money and they love to make things intriguing, so I wouldn't be surprised if it was some sort of like marketing in that regard.
If we're still going to get schedule release night,
exactly.
we're going to get legal tampering night.
Leaking all day, one game at a time, all week, all day long. Branden, have you had a chance to look at the quarterbacks this year in the draft class, or any wide receivers you like in particular? Are you a draft guy in particular, or what are your thoughts on that?
I am. I'll be honest with you. I love the top three guys. Like I see people fighting about Daniels or May.
Yeah,
I like them all. Like I don't know. I feel like
Washington's
a great spot. Right? Yeah, like I love that they are in this second spot. If somehow the Bears pass on Caleb Williams, you get Caleb Williams. If they take Caleb Williams, you get two great quarterbacks. And the idea of trading down, who came up with that? Why would you do that? You need a quarterback in a quarterback draft.
And next year's a poor quarterback class as well. So this is the year to do it. It's a high value quarterback class. But go ahead, Branden. Sorry to interrupt you.
It's not a poor quarterback class. It's a very bad quarterback class.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
2022 quarterback class.
Mm-hmm.
That's how bad people think it is. Where a quarterback didn't go in the top 20, and then another quarterback didn't go for 2 more rounds. That's what people think. It's like Carson Beck out of Georgia and a bunch of scrubs. Like Kyle McCord is not good, and people are talking about him as like a top 5 quarterback.
Jeez.
Well, you'll have the kid from Georgia. You'll have Shedeur Sanders. You'll have the kid from Texas. There will be guys that will put up big numbers and go high next year.
Yeah, I mean, Shedeur Sanders is probably going to go pretty high. I would imagine he eventually becomes the QB1 in the class if he's not already. But like, we all saw what happened. Yeah, we all saw what happened when a quarterback takes a lot of sacks in college. He tends to take a lot of sacks in the NFL. And Shedeur Sanders takes a lot of sacks.
Do you have a preference over Daniels and Mano? It's a hot topic on DC circles. What are your thoughts on it? You don't care? Pick your poison?
Pick your poison. Like whoever Adam Peters wants. Like it sounds like Dan Quinn from that interview with the Junkies really likes what he sees in Jaden Daniels. Okay. I mean, I'm not going to be mad either way. Like, I think, I see people fighting about it all the time on Twitter. I'm like,
they're hot.
I don't know, man.
It's been a long time since I've seen
Calm
people
down.
so divided on this thing. Like, and they're angry at each other.
They're angry and they're so certain that they're correct. That's the thing that kills me. Like, I think they both have flaws. I think they both have fixable flaws. And I mean, if Jaden Daniels didn't take a hit like he was Johnny Knoxville from Jackass 3 times a game, people would be way more excited. And if Drake May could throw to his left, people would be way more excited. And I get it. People want to fight. We have 2 months. This is what's going to happen. But I think either way, we're in a pretty good spot here.
I think in Washington, we're kind of jaded. We have that PTSD from both quarterbacks, right? So Jaden Daniels getting popped and hit, flashes of RG3, flashes of getting fear of being hurt right in regard to that. We had that UNC quarterback, Sam Howell, inaccuracy, gets a lot of sacks. You heard of him, you have footwork as well. We kind of project that on a Drake May as well. So we kind of have that.
People are afraid of Caleb Williams. People are afraid of Caleb Williams.
I don't see that at all, though. I think he's fantastic.
His nails, and he cried to his mom.
Yeah, he wore a dress on the GQ cover, even though a lot of people are saying that it wasn't a dress at all. It was some sort of garb. I don't know.
That's so funny.
Like, you can't draft him because he's local because of the Dwayne Haskins connection. Everybody's going to find a reason to be negative about anything.
That's true.
Now, in fairness, they do say that's a real thing, playing at home. Not everybody's built to play at home. Like Chase Young,
that's probably true.
Chase was built to play at home. I think he's
maybe. I don't know. Well, he was the rookie of the year.
Because of Ben DiNucci.
God, what a name! Can't wait for UFL.
George, the only other signing that the Commanders really had was Dorrance Armstrong. That felt like it was happening. That was maybe a even less kept secret than the Atlanta and Kirk Cousins thing. Still a good signing. People are talking about now having the Commando boys, but I don't quite see it that way. I get it. There are only 2 free agents came from Dallas. But they only have 2 people on the staff. To me, this is not the same thing as when Ron came here, brought the coaching staff, brought all over the hill guys with him. This isn't Thomas Davis, you know what I'm saying? So I don't mind this quite as much. Go ahead, buddy. Tell me why it is.
It's kind of the same thing, though, isn't it?
I don't think so. Let me jump on this, and I guess Branden, you can circle back. I like this signings because with the free agency, this is what I want from a free agent. I want someone that's like 26 to 28 on the upside of his career. I want someone in regard to that. And I think what Ron Rivera did was getting Trey Turner, got Norwell. These guys are at 32, 33. They're kind of washed. Johnson or Thomas Davis. And I feel like we needed a center, so we got a solidified center that's 26 years old.
Why didn't Ron bring McCaffrey with him? That would have been nice.
Fantastic. Or DJ Moore,
Yeah.
And then, I think the Dorrance Armstrong, I like that. I think he has 21 sacks over the last 3 years. He's 26 years old. He can play defensive tackle or edge. He'll be our DN1. I like it. I think, people are saying he got paid too much, but I think the market, I think it's just funny money in the NFL now. People walk like quarterbacks $50 million, edge $30 million, wide receivers $30 million. $10 million is like $100 bill now in the NFL, just so cheap nowadays. I think whatever.
33 million for Dorrance Armstrong. I mean, if that is a productive and full-time player, you're stealing.
I don't think he's going to be a blow your mind type of defensive end. I think he's going to be a 7-8, sack kind of guy, but he's going to be a role player. And that's what we need. We need a solidified person there because we don't have anyone there right now. We have KJ Henry, and who else? We have we have a bunch of rotational players. I don't even know their names right now. Casey Tuo's not even on the roster, I think.
Andre Carter's of the world.
Yeah, exactly. Andre Carter's actually pretty good. We have Andre Jones. So we have on our team.
Yeah. Andre Carter was very good. He
was pretty solid. I wish we had Andre Carter on our team right now.
Yeah.
Branden Works. So delve into why you think it's the same thing.
Well, I mean, you got to remember, Ron Rivera's first 2 signings were trading for Kyle Allen and bringing in Curtis Samuel. 2 guys under 26.
That's true.
So I'm just saying it's kind of similar. It's the same thing, but it's not because these are actually good players.
That's true.
But it is very funny how upset people got when Rivera brought in his own guys.
And they're dodging the
bullet
here, right?
The first 2 signings are Quinn guys. That's all I'm saying. It's funny. It's not indicative of anything. I think they're both good signings. Independent of everything else, they're good signings. I want that on the record. However, we have to acknowledge it is kind of similar. Just how everybody wanted to say Dan Quinn was not a Ron Rivera type hire, even though defensive coordinator, similar age, similar record, all that kind of stuff.
Hard to make the argument against. I get you. It's hard.
That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying it's similar.
Would you, assuming it takes pick 40, would you trade for Brian Burns?
No. Because I don't think it's going to take pick 40. I think it'll take more than that. But yes, I would. If it only took pick 40, yeah, sure.
And a big pile of cash.
Yeah.
Didn't the Jets offer 2 first-round picks for him or something? A team offered him 2
a couple of years ago. It was a big haul. The Rams, I know for
sure.
The
Rams. It was the Rams.
Okay. Yeah, it was the Rams. It was 2 first-round picks, and I believe a round 2 pick as well.
And a player maybe too, or something else outlandish. For me, I'd rather draft an edge player at number 40. Or in retrospect, we should have kept Montez Sweat if that was the case. I don't know how you guys feel about that.
I wonder if the new staff would have.
Yeah.
They traded him before. I guess that was a Eugene Shenaniano type thing, or I guess the outgoing. Ron probably thought he was doing the team a favor by grabbing him a second. I don't mind the second. I'm not saying the compensation wasn't very good. I wonder if this guy would have loved to have had a Montez Sweat.
Could you imagine Quinn with them? It'd been crazy. But go ahead, Branden. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
I was just going to say, I think having a very good player would be very good.
Let's get
the second round pick could be anything, but we know what Montez Sweat is,
Absolutely.
Let's get more good players. That's for sure. What do you think they'll be next? Who's the next big domino to fall? Anybody got any guesses?
We're at 30, man.
I mean, I think the biggest domino left is Justin Fields. So whatever happens there, but that's a trade which will take a couple days. So we'll see what happens. As far as free agents, I mean, now that Saquon's off Aaron Jones is probably the biggest running back left. He might be like one of the top 5 biggest names left. As long as he doesn't go to Dallas, it's fine with me.
Eric Armstead just got released.
That's an interesting one.
That's
Interesting free agent. No trading or anything like that. What do you think the value in, say, a John Allen trade is? You taking a second to move him right now?
I probably want a first, but at the same time, it's kind of like the Montez Sweat situation. Like, I know what Jonathan Allen is. Yeah. I don't want to give that guy up unless we're committing to a full rebuild, which would be tough because you're drafting the quarterback this year. So,
well, the name of the episode is Recalibration, Brendan. We're not
yes, we're rebuilding, not rebuilding.
Yes.
Semantics.
I would not.
You gotta love coaches. You gotta love coaches.
I would not want to trade Allen unless I was able to get a first-round pick, and I doubt anybody's going to give a first-round pick. So I would not trade Allen. No,
I wouldn't either. To be honest with you, people are really like. We're in a big group chat with a bunch of 60 Commander fans, and they all hate Jonathan Allen. I think he does his job well. I think he was in a bad situation last year. I think it was bad coaching. He still produces. I think he takes the bullets for the team. The team wasn't very good, and he would be the face person, the spokesperson for the team. That's hard to do. I mean, if you're on a sinking ship, someone has to stand up, and he's the one that stood up. I think he took bullets for it. So
the guy said he wanted to play for a winner. I'm thinking, hey, I want to root for a winner. You know,
I'm right there with
you. I feel you, big guy.
I mean, I think everybody kind of has those feelings because of what he was saying after the games. Like, I completely agree with you, George. Like, he was like the meat shield for the entire team.
Absolutely.
And he was, I mean, he was out there, like, they were quoting him every week. What do you think of Sam Howell? What do you think of Sam Howell?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not fair to put that guy on that pedestal as like the voice of the team and the voice of the locker room on a team that's sinking completely.
Absolutely.
And, like, yeah, he didn't play at a Pro Bowl level. Okay, I will give you that. Absolutely no one did. And after Sweat and Chase were gone, that defense was awful.
Yeah.
And, like, how much can outside of Aaron Donald, how much can a defensive tackle really impact a game that big? Like,
and any offensive coordinator worth their salt will basically all right, instead of focusing our energy on the outside of the edge blocking, we can just focus on the interior, just kind of double team Payne and Allen, take that away right there. So I can see that. So
those two guys were playing at like 75, 80% of the snaps last year.
Yeah.
Just incredible. I would mention that the tackle that
I was going to say real quick,
we weren't allowed to go backwards, so I won't do that.
Go ahead, Brandon. Sorry.
I was just going to say real quick, I'm pretty sure I saw a stat about him, Allen, having like one of the higher pass rush win rates, despite being double teamed a bunch. Like, it obviously wasn't as high as like some of the Aaron Donalds types, but like he was still winning his individual battles at a time where the double team rates were fairly high.
No, he's a monster.
He is. So real quick, I'm just looking at the top, the free agency board on PFF. 1 through 13 are pretty much locked up. Everyone's kind of flying off the boards now. Number 14 and 15 are intriguing for DC Sports. Number 14 is Tyron Smith, the former Cowboys tackle. I don't know if either one of you guys would want him in DC.
He's a pass for me.
And then number 15 is Kendall Fuller, who has mixed results. He's a PFF darling. People love him nationally. We also kind of see him kind of like up and down here in DC. Not really a game changer, but solid. Brandon, I'll start off with you. What are your thoughts on both of those free agents?
I would probably pass on both. Just
okay.
Age and talent.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the only free agent I'm really looking at, and out of like the top 10 guys, Calvin Ridley.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even then, I don't know how you commit that money to him, knowing that he was somewhat disappointing in Jacksonville last year as a number one receiver. I I don't know if you saw like that highlight clip of Trevor Lawrence drops, and it's like 80% of them are Calvin Ridley in the end zone.
I saw
Kind of tough to watch, but like he's one guy that has me at least intrigued, because I'm not exactly sure you can go into the season with Jahan Dotson as a number 2 type receiver. If you move him into the slot and he's like a smaller power slot type, like a Doug Baldwin, I could see that. But as for some of the older, more expensive options at other positions, I'm not exactly sure I see that.
What do you think?
And I'm not sure Fuller wants to be back. He may very well just be ready to.
He's done here.
Place. And Samuel, Curtis Samuel, I would take back. If they could find a way to get him back, I'd like him back. Because to your point, Branden, at some point they're going to need 4 wide receivers, right? I mean, that's generally what Cliff likes to do. If we're to believe that they're going to run some version of what he does, they need more wide receivers.
Yeah, I'd expect them to have 6 or 7 receivers, quality of starting at some point, just because of how deep his rotations usually go. I mean, a lot of those Arizona guys, they had, I'm trying to think off the top of my head. So they had Hopkins, Brown,
AJ Green, Brown.
Yeah.
They had a couple other people.
Yeah, like they were 5 deep of starting receivers, because they also drafted Rondale Moore, and they also drafted Andy Isabella, who was a bit of a bust, and then they also brought in a couple other receivers. So, like, I could see them definitely bringing in more receivers. I don't know. Now, the more I talk about this, the more I'm realizing there's absolutely no chance they're bringing Calvin Ridley, just because they're not going to spend that much money on receiver. Maybe I was really hoping Kendrick Bourne was going to hit free agency. I actually liked him a lot, but the deal that New England gave him is outrageous.
Yeah.
What was it? I didn't see it.
I think it was like 3 for 16 or 3 for 19. And like his production is in no way near that much. And I think it was like up to 3 for 30 with incentives, which is nuts.
I asked this the other day, and I think the difference gets smaller all the time. But what is the difference in the trade value of Sam Howell and Justin Fields at this point? Because I think they're getting very, very close.
Oh, no. Fields
Fields
is to command at least a 3rd rounder with the potential as a 2nd rounder. Howell, I mean, if you get a 5th rounder for him, you probably take it.
They just got a 6th for Mac Jones. Like I just with
maybe
Field,
if you get
with
a 6th,
Fields, he's showing up trying to be a starter, and there are no starting jobs for him. So, but you're paying him starting job money. You can get Howell, who may have starting potential, but is getting backup money, and knows he's going to be the backup when he gets there, unless you've offered him a job competition. Just that in itself makes me feel like the compensation starts getting closer. 4th for Howell, 3rd for Fields, maybe. I mean, I don't think it's as far off as people think.
I have a hard time believing that anybody's going to give up more than a 4th or 5th round pick for Howell. There was that was it the Athletic story a couple weeks ago where someone was like saying that he could command as much as the 3rd round pick, and I mean, there's no way.
Yeah, I don't see the 3rd at all, and it's probably closer to the 5th. I just think it's an interesting conversation. How far it has more to do with Fields, obviously, than how. The more and more jobs, like where is he going to go? He can't stay in Chicago just because he can't stay in Chicago. I mean, you can't do that, right? I mean, what's weird are Fields being that backup for Caleb Williams or Sam Howell being the backup for Drake May?
I think Fields for Williams, yeah, for sure. I think Howell and May will get along. I think it's not going to be as awkward as people think. I don't see Howell being I can see it being somewhat awkward, and I can see it being a waste of asset. If you have Howell just sitting there in your QB room and you could get a 4th for him, potentially trade him, but at the same time, he's a very cheap backup. If you have him kind of already, he can potentially grow, and you can trade him for a higher pick later on. Maybe he could be a backup for us. I don't see Howell being a really negative thing in DC, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't see Howell sticking around in DC.
Okay.
No.
Because if you're going to
have notion that his backup from college is
just cursing him. It's always falling.
Yeah. And he's just going to be fine. That you got paid 10 times more than I did. You got the starting job, and I'm just going to be like, Cool, nice job, bro. Good on you. No, I don't work that way. Maybe he does.
Yeah, I just don't see it because if you're bringing in a quarterback at number 2, you're going to want a veteran backup. I mean,
Yeah, well,
I don't
that's
know if
true.
you bring in Jacoby Brissett again, but I mean, that would be ideal. But it sounds like New England is really into Brissett as their
Keep hearing that too.
backup bridge. So, I would go maybe like an Andy Dalton or something like that. I mean, not a guy that you're expecting to start, but a guy that can mentor and, fill in if there's injury or something like that. I like having Howell on the roster. It kind of doesn't work with how modern QB rooms work. Like that third quarterback is developmental and he's better than developmental. So I can't exactly see him being the backup to a number 2 pick and them not having a veteran, but I don't see a veteran being the number 3. And I don't see him being the number 3 either. So, I mean, whatever, they're going to have to figure something out. I just don't know how that shakes out yet.
Makes sense.
Yeah, he probably gets dealt right before the draft or after everybody's figured out what they've got to do. That makes sense. Before we get out of here, Brendan, we ask everybody, who do you think the pick will be at 2? I know you said you don't care, but just give us one now. We're going to bookmark them.
I'm going to go with Jaden Daniels for now. Okay. It feels like the riskier pick, but I also think his rushing upside is a bit of a safer floor, at least as a rookie while they're learning the playbook and learning the NFL speed. I think, again, either way, you cannot go wrong with that pick. I just think he's got a slightly higher upside because of his rushing ability, and he's got a slightly higher floor because of his rushing floor. I really like Drake May. I think what he's been able to do, especially this past year when Devontae Walker was his best receiver and he didn't even have him for the first 5 weeks, like that receiver room was very inexperienced. And he was, he showed off his rushing a bit. I do slightly worry about all the, I don't want to say rumors because it's not exactly rumor, but it's guys kind of hinting at he's going to be falling down the draft more than we think. And given the subtle hint that Quinn had with the Junkies about saying what he thought about
game breaker for Daniel.
Yeah, I kind of lean Daniels for now, but again, I'll be excited either way.
And George, I think that makes it pretty much 50-50. We've probably done 10, 15 of these shows now where we're asking folks, and I think
that makes sense to me. That's how it should be.
Yeah.
It's the first year I can remember, though, that it's just been like Caleb's here.
It's pick your flavor. It really is.
It's like,
do you value mobile quarterbacks? Do you value big body quarterbacks? It's where everyone has a different interest watching football. So it's pretty interesting. You know what I want to say.
All right, Brendan, we appreciate you. And George, we're back on Friday, which I'm excited about our guest for that.
Sounds good. All right, take care, gentlemen. Peace out.
See you guys.